Good morning, it's July 18th, and this is To My Liberal Friends. Hi ho, it's off to work we go. This was the song sung by the dwarfs in Snow White. Today, that seems to be something that the workforce abhors. They're much more interested in their free time. The shorter the work week, the fewer hours became a real trend in socialist Europe. The government was going to provide great pensions, and they would have more time to enjoy the things they wanted to do in life. I think most of us can remember this past January when protests began in France with over 1 million people taking to the streets because the French government wanted to raise the retirement age for that lucrative government pension from 62 years old to 64 years old. President Macron and his government argued that raising the retirement age was necessary to keep the French pension system afloat amid this aging population. But the working people of France objected. They wanted the wealthy and corporations to pay higher taxes so they would not have to work. Macron won that fight, and France did raise the retirement age to 64. Now, how many of you think we're coming up with that same problem here in the United States? I've spoken about the crisis facing our own government retirement program, Social Security, and the need to make some reforms or it will be bankrupt. But just like in France, it will be a difficult task and one that cannot be done unless Democrats and Republicans come up with a bipartisan solution. Absent that compromise, one side or the other will weaponize any change against the one proposing it. We've already seen that as Democrats have repeatedly made false claims that the Republican Party wants to end your Social Security. They ignore that every study shows that unless something is done, the funds for that program will be running out about 2035 and benefits will have to be reduced. This is such a politically charged issue, sometimes referred to as the third rail of politics, that Social Security and Medicare were taken off the table in the debt reduction talks between Joe Biden and Kevin McCarthy. In the United States, we're already seeing the younger people in the workforce demanding fewer hours of work for the same pay. According to the National Bureau of Economic Research, the number of hours people spent working between 2019 and 2022 fell by the equivalent of 33 fewer hours per person. The COVID-19 pandemic didn't just disrupt where and how we show up to our jobs, it's led people to question when and why they should be working in the first place. During COVID, the government passed out stimulus checks without regard to who got them and who needed them. It got people used to free money without working, and they liked it. Now, last summer I was building a new home. The framing crew showed up to start framing. It consisted of 6 men. Three were framers and 3 were cutters. The cutters are young kids who simply cut the wood to the specification of the 3 framers who are nailing the wood together. It was hot in June here in St. George, Utah. After the first week, the 3 cutters quit. They did not like working in the heat, and they had just received a check from the government for about $1,400, and they could sit in the basement and play video games. Why be out in the heat? The result of all this free money and the belief that you don't have to work that hard has led to a demand for a shorter work week. Of course, that does not mean anybody wants to accept a smaller paycheck. They want their cake and be able to eat it as well. They want to work from home, something they became prevalent during the pandemic, and they want to work the hours they say they work for them. The European workers have already done all of that. They got the working hours and conditions they demanded. The results now hitting them are not something they expected. Europeans are facing a new economic reality, one they haven't experienced in decades. They're becoming poorer. The French are eating less foie gras and drinking less red wine. Spaniards are stinting on olive oil. Finns are being urged to use saunas on windy days when energy is less expensive. Across Germany, meat and milk consumption has fallen to the lowest level in 3 decades, and the once booming market for organic food has tanked. Europe's current predicament has been long in the making. An aging population with a preference for free time and job security over earnings ushered in years of lackluster economic and productivity growth. Weak growth and rising interest rates are straining Europe's generous welfare states, which provide popular healthcare services and pensions. European governments find the old recipes for fixing the problem are either becoming unaffordable or have stopped working. €750 billion in subsidies, tax breaks, and other forms of relief have gone to consumers and to businesses to offset higher energy costs, something economists say is now itself fueling inflation, defeating the subsidy's purpose. Does that ring a bell? The massive COVID spending bills of the past 2 years fueled inflation here in the United States. We saw inflation soar to 9%. Well, Joe Biden brags that he's bringing it down, but have you seen the price in the grocery store come down? They may not be rising as fast as they were, but they're still much higher than anyone is used to seeing them. The cost to put food on the table for a family is still astronomically high. Gas costs less than it did a year ago, but still much higher than when Biden took office. And this week, Biden tried to claim he was increasing wages. Quote, right now, real wages for the average American worker is higher than it was before the pandemic, with lower wage earners seeing the largest gains. And that's according to the president, and he said that's Bidenomics. But once again, Biden got the facts wrong, or should I say someone writing his Twitter account got them wrong. You can be sure he will be cursed at by Biden. Here are the facts. Quote, on March 15, 2020, when U.S. COVID lockdowns began, real wages adjusted for inflation were $11.15. As of 16th of July, 2023, real wages, which is called AFI, are at $11.05. Real wages remain lower, not higher than before the pandemic, end quote. But the main point I'm making today is that our workforce in the U.S. today is hell-bent on following the missteps of those in Europe. They want more money for less, and they want the government to ensure their retirement and well-being. All I can say to them is, hi-ho, it's off to work you go. It's been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, hit the subscribe button and recommend it to your friends. And if you have a comment, please leave it. I'd love to hear from you.